Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox, and it's the morning of November 6th. It looks like Trump is going to win a second term in office, and I feel like I need some hope. And I feel like a lot of you probably do too, especially since many of you are probably targeted by Project 2025. My fiance, for instance, is afraid that she's either going to be gulagged or deported. And she is understandably upset about that. I would like to remind her that she is an American-born citizen with an American-born citizen for a father, and that by current laws, there's no reason for her to be deported or put into a concentration camp. But Project 2025 very much wants to change those laws, and I mean, they're already talking about targeting Puerto Ricans pretty heavily, so like, those are, even if you sent them back to Puerto Rico, you'd still be sending them to America. This is like asking to kick out all the New Yorkers from North Carolina. I mean, whole wealthy neighborhoods would disappear, and maybe it would be a better thing for North Carolinians in general, but, you know, it's just not how we do things. And, you know, she could very easily say to me, you know, as he said, he intends to do this stuff. So, it's all of us need a way to cope, I guess. And one of the ways that I want to get into in the future, I want to do another video about QAnon, because QAnon is truly fascinating and also just a very interesting character within this election as well. But also the conspiracy theory that fuels it and where all of that comes from. And conspiracy theories are really handy for people because you take what appears to be a conspiracy, you take, you know, all the evidence that you have, everything that's real and that exists, and there's a space in between that we can't prove yet. And the thing about conspiracy theory, there's no better way, some ways, to hide an actual conspiracy than to put it behind a conspiracy theory, because people will just hock to it, crop their ideas down and spit on that thing and just shove them into that hole, whether they fit or not. So, because these speculation tends to be so much more inflammatory than what we actually know about the real conspiracy, these inflammatory allegations end up being the only things you ever hear about within these conspiracies. And while they may be in some ways based on a true story, they end up just devolving into unrealism. And one of the ways that, so like, there are still, though, conspiracy theories that I do buy into on a certain level, or like, I think you're in the right ballpark with this, right? But I also feel like there's probably a PR campaign to make people who believe this sound as crazy as possible. And one of the best examples I can ever think of for this is the conspiracy theory around the Illuminati. I mean, the idea that wealthy oligarchs are pulling the strings in America is, I think, should be accepted fact. I mean, look at Elon Musk's relationship to this last election. The man was literally handing out money to voters to get them to vote and create influencer content for him, encouraging other people to vote for the man who was going to keep him from being deported for the country from not getting a work visa. Yeah, so he had a lot of skin in the game, and it's really hard to argue that powerful, rich oligarchs aren't pulling the strings. The thing is, you know, there's a certain level of consistency that's expected through the Illuminati, like this is old families that have been pulling the strings for forever, and maybe there's some amount of that. Generational wealth is a thing, but Elon Musk only recently became, like, America's richest citizen, and that's fluctuated, and, you know, who this person is that's at the top, and who is at the top can fluctuate quite a lot. So, instead of this being something that's consistent and run by Jewish families or whatever, and just how this all devolves into anti-Semitism and conspiracy and all the crazy allegations and speculation as opposed to what we know is real, because we have a lot of conspiracies here in America, a lot of legitimate conspiracies, and I would argue that every wealthy person themselves is the head of a conspiracy in some way, because you don't legally get super astronomical wealth amounts of money. Like, income inequality, as it happens in America, does not happen legally. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be an income inequality if we followed literally every one of our rules. I'm just saying it wouldn't be nearly as bad if people weren't getting fleeced or ripped off constantly. And this theft is obfuscated enough through these conspiracies that, I mean, we just end up calling the conspiracy a corporation, and there it is, you know? Like, it's just right out there in the open, you know? Every corporation that makes a huge amount of money is doing so using these means, and there is very likely a conspiracy to keep quiet what they are actually doing. And we keep seeing so many of these big companies like FTX, with Bankman-Fried, all this stuff, going down, and they were massively wealthy. They made their wealth all of a sudden, and all this. They very rapidly became these wealthy influencers within politics. Bankman-Fried himself being a influential donor before he was eventually caught. You know, every one of these corporations, for better or for worse to some degree, is engaging in this type of conspiracy. And the thing about conspiracies like this is that they set out roots, kind of like a mycelium, right? And these little tendrils reach out to each other, and when they reach another conspiracy like them, they say, hey, are you doing the same thing? Like, we could kind of control this market. Like, think about it this way. Within the pork market right now, there's basically 4 big players, and they each control multiple parts of the supply chain. So it's not like they're just players in this one area. Like, they're not just the pork farmers. They also control the slaughterhouses, distribution, warehousing, etc. So these 4 players came in with their own conspiracy to dominate the market and to take things over, and I'm sure that they did this in all legal and upstanding ways, of course. Nothing to hide for certain. No real collusion there. And then these 4 companies essentially found out about each other, or discovered that each other were doing the same thing, and at some point, you know, they realized that they wouldn't be able to take each other out, so they said, hey, we have to coexist with each other as one kind of larger organism. As one larger organism. And this organism can effectively divide the profits from this entire industry within America between us, and we'll all get filthy rich doing it. And there's a lot of conspiracies that work like that, where it's a lot of people who are looking to make money in a certain way safely without, you know, regulatory or legal speculation, that hence the conspiracy, to keep all that quiet. And they tend to band together, make each other wealthy, and through that, you know, incriminating each other. If any of them goes down, all of them go down, so they all protect each other. They're all buying influence through their money and power, and more money and power they have. I mean, this is no conspiracy, but money and power buy you influence in politics here in America. Very great influence, not only over politicians themselves, but over voting base if you have enough money and aren't afraid to bribe people. Like, I can't believe that we just did this out in the open in 2024. It's really crazy to me. Anyways, again, not a conspiracy. We saw Elon Musk handing people money to vote the way he wanted them to. It's very bizarre. Like some sort of weird Mr. Beast scam. And it's even weirder that, like, this happened after the whole Mr. Beast illegal lottery thing blew up. Like, you should know this is a bad idea. I know you spend a lot of time online. You, specifically Elon Musk, should know that this is illegal, and I'm sure you have better lawyers than Mr. Beast who told you this is illegal, and you still did it to influence the election. But this idea doesn't necessarily have to have some shadowy vampire Jew demonic Satanist cabal working at the top to make it work. This is just how America is set up. Like, if you don't like this, change the laws. Please change the laws. I mean, really, like, this is just the natural consequence of our system. That you don't need an Illuminati to head it all. But at the same time, there are a lot of conspiracies operating in this space, and all of them get a certain amount of obfuscation from just how crazy certain Illuminati believers are. But it is kind of a conspiracy theory that, again, as long as I don't get into those details and believe all the speculation, the parts that are real of it, that I can confirm and that are obvious and apparent to me, you know, in a way, while I don't co-sign all the crazy things that the whole space of the Illuminati conversation say, it's one that I do believe on a certain level. So for the rest of this video, because conspiracy theories make great cope, I'm going to explain to you a couple other conspiracy theories, some of which, fuck it, I'll just make up on the spot. Let's have some fun with this, and please seriously take it with a grain of salt. I am going to be trying to steel man each one of these arguments as much as I can, and believe me, you're going to love the first one, and that is that Kanye West is a psyop. Right, okay, so folks, do you remember Kanye West's Nazi phase, like his aggressively Nazi phase? It was bad. There are so many open, loud, and proud fascists, like leaders of fascist groups, that don't talk the way that he did during this phase. And I say this is a psyop for a number of reasons, because A, these racist groups, they really, really love it when they can have a black or Latino spokesperson. I mean, just look at the Proud Boys. They put a Latino in charge just to say, oh, we're not racist, we've got a Mexican in charge. Not to say that he is a Mexican, but I don't think they would care to make the distinction, is the point, you know? But he is so openly and obviously, like, he literally, he was so open about his love for Adolf Hitler that he made Alex Jones uncomfortable. Do you know how insanely openly fascist you have to be to make Alex Jones uncomfortable? Now, why did this happen, and how is it a psyop? Is it not just him having a mental health breakdown? I mean, that's definitely probably part of it, but there's more to it than that. So first, I want you to think about all these racists and fascists out here who are dog whistling to the public. In the absence of people doing truly horrendous things, those dog whistles have become easier to notice. And we, as content creators, just people who are media literate at this point, we've gotten a lot better at pointing out when these fascist dog whistles are happening. So, the only way to really obfuscate those dog whistles is to be able to, like, point to a black man and said, no, like, Donald Trump never said, I love Hitler. But Kanye did. He said it to Alex Jones, right? So that kind of gives him some cover. And all these other crypto-fascists, it gives them some cover too. Because all of them want to say the quiet part out loud, that's the point. And they will say the quiet part out loud to anyone inside their circle who will listen, who they feel safe with. But what they really dream of is having someone who's willing to say the quiet part out loud to literally anyone to spread their message without having to deal with the consequences of being that person who said to Alex Jones, no dude, I literally love Hitler. And if you look at the people who were surrounding him at this time of potential mental weakness, you have some of the most fascist people in the world, Milo Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes. And both of them, if you watch, like, they're with him in a lot of the video evidence from this series of things in his life. They were like his circle. They replaced his circle, basically. He went everywhere with them. They were his entourage, and they were very influential in the way that he thought. But you can see them in those interviews being the reasonable racists that are like dog whistling and trying not to make it obvious. And then they cut to Kanye and he just says, no dude, we need a genocide. Genocide was the right idea, actually. Or some shit like that, which they wish they could say. And they smile and they snicker and they're like, as he says it, but they never say like, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, sometimes they do, but usually not to things like that, which allows them to have their cake and eat it too. They're clearly here as uber racist, and to people who get that, they get that. But to your normies, it's like, wait, you're telling me these two are the racists in the room? That guy just said he literally loves Hitler. The black guy is more racist than these two white people. They love that type of situation. They eat it up. And I mean, I don't think that there was much more going on here necessarily than Kanye West being a mentally disturbed, useful idiot for them for a while, but I feel like there was a there almost certainly had to be this huge influence campaign to push him into this specific mindset, and it feels like it happened at a time and just for a reason. You know, he gave them all so much cover by doing this. He gave white racists specifically so much cover by doing this, because now, and until the end of time, they'll have a black racist to point to that's not actually a skit on a Dave Chappelle show. Or Mark Robinson. But as a North Carolina person, I am very happy that this man did not just get named our governor. I'm disturbed that he was the lieutenant governor, but I'm glad he's not our governor. So yeah, I mean, as long as you don't add any extra ideas to that, personally, that's a conspiracy theory, I believe. That he was he was groomed. I mean, you can see them grooming him, you really can. And the amount of cover that he provides, especially during this election of all times, is just huge. Especially since... No, here's another couple of conspiracy theories, because he's not the only, psyop like this out there, right? They love, because they'll do this, and I'll get more into kind of the in America election influence campaigns in a future video, because it feels like the Get Out the Vote movement for Donald Trump was very influenced by foreign influence campaigns. They kind of adopted their playbook, and to be fair, their playbook is a lot more digitally advanced than whatever the fuck Joe Biden was doing. And it really created kind of, I think in this particular election, it created a sort of 2008 Obama moment where he was the only of the two candidates who really understood how to leverage social media. It feels like in this election we've kind of returned to that place, and it is because of heavy borrowing from these foreign influence campaigns and their AI playbooks. And again, this is something I've covered in a number of videos, but if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you should definitely check those videos out. You'll have to seek them out because YouTube does not want to show people these things. But also, if that is the kind of content that you really want to see from this channel, you gotta ring the bell when you subscribe, or YouTube just won't show you that stuff. Seriously, they will wait until I make a perfectly family-friendly cut, and then they'll show that to thousands of people. But I talk about foreign influence, and it gets 12 views. So that feels weird. There's another conspiracy theory, I believe, that they're actively suppressing coverage of this kind of stuff, at least in my experience, my anecdotal experience with them. So ring the bell so that you see that stuff. Remember to like and subscribe. But yeah, it became really explicit within the last couple days of the campaign that Robert F. Kennedy was a Republican plant from the fucking get-go. This man is like a crazy-pilled version of Jill Stein. He is a doctor, but he's a doctor of law. Yeah, that's right, he's a lawyer. This is the man that Donald Trump wants to put in charge of women's bodies and the CDC, an anti-vaxxer in charge of the CDC. And in a way, he was there, in the primary to kind of pull some popular support from Joe Biden, and then kind of stayed in to pull popular support away from Kamala. But he was never very good at it. In fact, I think the thing that he was more primarily doing for the Republicans was giving them a crazy Democrat to point at, in a way, or I don't know, because a lot of the Republican base seemed heavily invested in supporting him. I might actually vote Democrat for RFK kind of people seemed to be everywhere online. And I say seemed because American influence campaigns. But they didn't seem all that mad at him, even though this man is he's got to be a stain on the reputation. A real low point for all the human beings that have run for Democratic office, and ooh, that's a statement. But, he was clearly put in there as a spoiler candidate. He continues on as a spoiler candidate, even though he has very openly come out as a Trump supporter. They're having a little love affair right now. Trump probably smells like a dead whale anyways. That's the kind of thing he's into. Not Trump RFK, for clarity, RFK once drove around with a dead whale strapped to his car with plastic bags over his children's heads so that they didn't get whale juices on them. Fun, yeah. Yeah, put him in charge of women's bodies. Yes, as Donald Trump said, he'll protect them whether they like it or not. But not from RFK. He's not gonna protect the women from RFK. I really wish he would. So, yeah, this one doesn't so much feel like a conspiracy theory given the last week or so. It seems like he was definitely a Republican operative the whole time. It's just he wasn't very successful at doing the thing that they initially wanted him to do because most Democratic voters have a couple of brain cells, or at the very least don't have literal brain worms. By the way, RFK, I know we throw this around a lot about people having brain worms these days. RFK had literal brain worms, probably from eating a dead bear. Maybe. I don't know. We don't know if he ate a dead bear, but that is one way to get the specific type of brain worm that he got. He could have gotten it from eating that dog that he is photographed with in, I believe, Taiwan? I don't know. No disrespect to Taiwan if that wasn't where that happened, but there's so many crazy stories about him. The reason that there's speculation over bear is because he once recounted to Roseanne Barr, I believe, and then recorded it and posted it online, how he picked up a dead bear off the side of the road, drove it around for a little while, realized he had a steak dinner to get to, so he then planted it in Central Park in New York with a bike that was from his car to make it look like it hadn't been hit by a car. Maybe not his car, but somebody's car, and instead make it look like it was somehow killed by someone hitting it with a bike. Can you imagine that for a second? I just want you to imagine someone hitting a bear with a bicycle hard enough to kill it. But I also want you to imagine why he's even like framing and staging the crime scene like this, unless he hit it with his own car. I have so many questions about him and his car, and why anyone would want to fuck him after riding in it. Look, I don't care who you've got with you. If I have to sit in that back seat, any blunt rotation is a nightmare blunt rotation. So I keep trying to think of an idea, and the problem that I have is that it's hard to find a conspiracy theory when so many of these things were done by absolute fucking buffoons pretty much right out in the open. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I realize that there were more conspiracies that were demonstrated over the last year than there are things that are really still open to theorize about. Here's a good example. If you've heard of predictive markets before, you might know that they're at least reported to be incredibly accurate prediction tools. Now, the reason is that people have to put their money where their mouth is, so quite simply, you only vote with your money for an outcome when you believe that it is truly the most likely outcome to happen. So, if you're a Trump supporter and you want to make some money and you don't genuinely think he's going to win, you're probably not going to bet on him. Or at least, that's the way it should work. And as it is with a lot of economic principles, how it should work and how it ends up being gamed are two completely different things. For instance, in one particular market that made a lot of news by being very, very, very heavily in favor of Trump, that was just, as it turns out, a single French investor, and they were like wash trading with themselves. They had multiple accounts that had multiple positions and was pumping just large amounts of money into the system in a fluctuating pattern, like micro gaming the system in a very sophisticated algorithmic trading sort of way. Like, this guy was spamming sales in order to manipulate the prices and his winnings, because if you dump all the money in at once, then you skew the market and you don't make as much off of that. But if you can trickle it in under multiple accounts, it ends up being more profitable in the long term. And that's exactly what this man was doing. And in doing so, not only was he trying to rug pull like everyone who wanted to put money in on this, but like, it was never American people to begin with, because I think it's illegal to bet on that kind of thing here. So this was always foreigners. Betting on the election to begin with. But it's really surprising how much of the money came from a single source. And you could also think of this as a thing that effectively supports Trump in the campaign. This was good media publicity for him. I mean, you can be winning in the polls, and that means something, but if you have this new type of poll that's trendy and that people think is incredibly accurate because it's this mysterious new technology of having people make a stock market to bet on things. It's not the newest concept. Things regularly, big companies regularly fail, like companies that have high valuations. It happens. But yeah, this one guy was juicing the whole market, and this produced a lot of positive headlines for Trump. Is there collusion there? But hey, this is a conspiracy theory. I can certainly allege there is some. I mean, how many millions of dollars worth of advertising for him was this worth? It made its own stories. He didn't have to pay for the stories. He didn't have to pay for ad time. The news was reporting on this just for him, on his behalf. The content was being made for him. Which is good, because if you've seen any of the Trump trading cards or any of his, made-for-TV grifts that look like they're made to go on Fox News at 3 p.m. to sell exclusively to the 75 and older crowd, it's probably for the best that other people produce his content for him. Okay, actually, let's take this next one, way back to what I think of as the first rigged election of my lifetime. The year is 2000, and shit is about to get real in America in all sorts of terrible ways, but we don't know that yet. We think we're voting between George Bush and Al Gore, and after election night, the country is still deadlocked. No one has the votes they need to win, and there's a couple of counties in Florida that are holding this whole process up. Do you remember hanging chads? Yes, this is where the whole hanging chad thing comes in. And because of how big of a role this whole narrative played in the election, this is why punch-out ballots aren't really a thing you're going to find in America anymore. They got an incredible amount of bad publicity during the 2000 election. But that's not the salacious part here. Do you know who the governor of Florida at the time was? Jeb Bush. So when ultimately the Supreme Court of Florida had to come down on the side of who won the election based on which of the hanging chads counted, whether they counted at all or any of these decisions, a decision that would directly decide the outcome of the election, wouldn't you know it, the Florida Supreme Court, perhaps with a little bit of encouragement from their governor, came down on the side of George W. Bush, a man who, even with this being the case, even if the Supreme Court of Florida did come to the right decision here in a politically unbiased way, which is maybe how we remember this, depends who you ask, George Bush still lost the popular vote. In fact, basically every Republican candidate ever in any election in my history, in the history of my life at least, has always lost the popular vote, whether they won or lost. So here's a weird one. Donald Trump seems to be in the lead in the popular vote right now. Again, I'm recording this on Wednesday morning, November 6th. So maybe there's still like a bunch of mail-in ballots to be counted or something that lean really blue. Maybe there's, maybe the last states are going to go blue and there's just going to be a lot of votes. I mean, electorally, I don't think that that's actually going to matter at this point. It looks pretty certain that Trump has won, unless some things flip that have already been decided. It looks like he's got this. But maybe those states come in finally very, very heavily for Kamala, and that swings her back into the popular vote lead. But I do want to comment on how particularly strange it is that the most popular opposition candidate to Donald Trump would be the only race that he's been in so far where he's won the popular vote. Like, how is that possible? People were not particularly excited to vote for Joe Biden, and lingering ideas of corruption really haunted Hillary Clinton. Kamala Harris doesn't really have that baggage. Sure, she's not a long-standing political name, and maybe this does just come down to name recognition in a way, and I guess that gets me into another conspiracy theory, but not really a conspiracy theory, but just a theory, I guess. But it's really strange that he would all of a sudden, in this particular election, win with these numbers. This is probably the most dangerous conspiracy theory of all because it has a lot of open space. It is, on its face, just a mathematical inconsistency that might iron itself out by tomorrow. But it does seem really strange. Like, again, in 2000 and in 2004, George Bush lost the popular vote. In 2016, Donald Trump lost the popular vote, even though he won the election. And in 2020, Donald Trump again lost the popular vote, and this time the Electoral College as well. So, what gives? Why is he suddenly so much better now? Could it just be name recognition? Like, I hate to believe this about people, but we do have a tendency, especially in this country, towards political dynasty. George W. Bush was the son of George H.W. Bush, a one-term president from the late 80s and early 90s. Hillary Clinton would have been the wife of Bill Clinton, who was the predecessor. Nope. Of Bill Clinton, who would take the spot from George H.W. Bush in 1992. On the other hand, Joe Biden is a political dinosaur who has been in office probably more than he's been in any of his 4 or 5 houses over the last, 40, 50 years. This man is at least a very well-established politician. And, 2016 Donald Trump absolutely wasn't. I guess there's an argument to saying that he is now a former president, so he has a bit more credibility in that way. But at the same time, Kamala Harris kind of has some of the same issues, and she's a former vice president. But, it just seems particularly weird that even if he would win the Electoral College and the election as a whole, that he would win the popular vote as well. But there is a theory that was propped up a lot in 2016, 2017, and, into 2020, about how, just putting this man on the goddamn news all the fucking time was the problem. Like, he just got too much airtime. Even if the people who were talking about him were talking badly about him, that still seemed to help. Maybe this is just a name recognition thing. Maybe there's just not a deep recognition of who Kamala Harris is, and she still feels like too much of an unknown. Or at the very least, we've suffered through one term of Trump before. But there is definitely a part of me that believes that constantly being drip-fed Donald Trump stories, even if they're bad, just kind of lends an air of inevitability to him, or like he's the one. Like this election was, again, like almost every election that he's been in, an election about him, kind of in a fundamental way. He's like this black hole, in a way. Like, he sucks all conversation into himself. He sucks all the attention out of every room into himself. And you really have to have a strong and well-established brand, perhaps in the way that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden did, to really be able to deal with that. Now, luckily, if our laws don't change massively over the next 4 years, he is now, at this point, finally barred from running again. Of course, unlike what I said in my wishes for 2029, I don't think the Republican Party will learn any lesson from this. In fact, the lesson I do think that they'll learn from this is that maybe they need to be more openly fascist. I mean, it seems to have worked. Again. And, as I noted in that video, they don't really have any better ideas, as much as I would love to give them some. Okay, so this is one I feel like I should go into a lot more detail in than I am about to. And also, of all the parts in this video, this one's about to get really fucking dark. I think I might have to cut the last 20 minutes that I just recorded. I might have to just put it up on Discord, that whole conversation. If the first part of my video didn't tank it in the recommendation algorithm, then getting into snuff film, mafia, Epstein-Trump connections, that absolutely did. So maybe that should definitely be its own separate thing. It definitely is more of a downer than what I was trying to make with this video, but also definitely is a conspiracy theory that I do on some level believe. Maybe tune in to watch that one later, but also ring the bell, because, you know, that type of content, you're not going to see it otherwise. YouTube's not going to tell you about it when I release this. You'll have to come find it for yourself or be on that notification train. So ring the bell, make that happen. And check out the link in the description for all the corners of the Jackie Fox Media universe, including a podcast version of this show, and other things, including books that I've written in the fiction space, but also ways to donate to the channel if you would like to support content like this. Or if you found this interesting or helpful or supportive or helped you cope or made you laugh or any of that stuff, let me know in the comments. And with all that being said, thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.